Russia closed its market for Ukrainian goods and services immediately after the new government has been appointed. Plus, Russia closed the transit through its land territory of Ukrainian goods to its historical market in Caucasus and Asia. So basically, for the first year of this ban, Ukraine had a direct loss only in export of goods, more than $1 billion US. So I'm not talking about the part of economic aggression, which is, the issue with gas and all others, but it's not only about the military aggression. Russia's major goal is to make Ukraine a failed state using all means. So when I will be talking about economic growth, I really need to concentrate on the issue related to developing of new markets for Ukraine, what we were doing, because I sincerely believe that Ukrainian business are my personal heroes, because they are the ones that actually saved our country by reorienting the export from Russia, Belarus, Kazakhstan to European Union, to United States, to Canada. They are the ones that actually pushed forward our economy and pushed this 3.5% growth that we have at this particular moment. If we talk about the achievement of the government and of the President Poroshenko, because I really want to make here one point. I believe that after this presidential election, a lot of people are turning toward lynching President Poroshenko, which I believe it's not, kind of a thing to do, because there were a lot of failures, but there were a lot of achievements. And we need to give him credits for the things that has been done. And maybe that's kind of not a popular thing to say, but I really believe that people need to give him credits for the things that he's done in terms of fighting against Russian aggression, in terms of creating the coalition of our international partners for supporting Ukraine, and a lot of other things that has been done, and also for the things that has been done by Arseniy Yatsenyuk government and Volodymyr Groysman government. In terms of economics, I believe that the biggest achievements are SOE reforms, state-owned enterprises reforms. What we see now on the boards of Ukrainian former most corrupted companies such as Ukrzaliznytsia, we have a representative of Atlantic Council, which could not have been imagined before. We have a lot of companies that are having independent members of the board that have a grand recognition name. Some of them are Stanford graduates. If we talk about small privatization, I believe that was a big success. We have ProZorro, public procurement system, that actually Max Nefedov is here, and I believe that was one of the major achievements that contributed to economic growth. In terms of developing of Ukrainian exports, for the last 4 years, Ukraine concluded 3 big trade deals. First one, we commend the free trade agreement with European Union, that actually helped Ukraine to diversify its export, and now European Union is #1 trading partner for Ukraine. Our export to European Union grows annually and every month. And what is most important is that the goods that primarily were exported to Russia are now being exported to EU. We have every month some new item coming to the European market. The second deal is free trade agreement with Canada, that was concluded, and Canada was always big supporter of Ukraine in terms of the politics, but now we have Canadian market open for Ukrainian goods. And the third one is agreement with Israel, free trade agreement with Israel, in order to grow our export. In terms of the failures, I believe that judicial reform was the biggest failure. And judicial reform is the thing that actually hinders bringing investments into the country. Because what are the sources of economic growth? First is investments, both foreign and domestic. Second one is Ukrainian export growth. And the third one is internal market development. So judicial reform is crucial for all of these 3 biggest elements of economic growth. The second failure is a big privatization. I do believe that, unfortunately, we failed at that due to different reasons. The third one, again, which is connected to economic growth, it's failure in changing the anti-monopoly landscape of Ukraine. the recent decision of Anti-Monopoly Committee, where they just allow Ukrainian oligarch to acquire one more energy company, does not contribute to development and to economic growth of Ukraine. The fourth failure is economic diplomacy. I do believe that Ukraine succeeded in terms of building the coalition of international partners to support Ukrainian reforms and to support fighting aggression, but we did fail in terms of creating the network of economic diplomacy and promoting Ukraine in terms of bringing more investment into the country and promoting Ukrainian goods. One more failure is innovation, development, and tech entrepreneurship support. What can be done and what should be done? I believe that what should be done, and everybody already pointed out to that, we are facing forthcoming parliamentary election, and I really believe that what should be done, we need to see on Ukrainian political landscape the new, renewed, relaunched political force that would have among the top 10 issues on its agenda at least 5 that are primarily concentrated on economic growth. Because I believe that we won't have democracy in Ukraine, and the democracy will not be sustainable unless we have an economic growth, and unless we have more small and mid-sized business, prosperous, developed, protected, and we have more investment into the country. The biggest threat that I see now is that we potentially might see Ukrainian oligarchs again influencing the big politics in Ukraine. There are a lot of rumors saying that current president-elect might have connection to one of the biggest oligarchs in Ukraine. We still hear a lot of rumors that a lot of oligarchs are now forming or trying to influence the forming of the potentially relaunched or renewed political parties that would run for the parliament. And I believe that people that are present here from Ukraine, all of them are interested in actually making Ukraine prosperous, more competitive, and very successful economy, not only in Europe, but in the world.
Well, thanks very much. Before I open it up to the floor, let me ask a question to all the panelists. I think, Natalia, your question about the influence of the oligarchs. And certainly I think Ukraine wants to have strong business people, but also you don't want to have them exercising outsized political influence on the system. And particularly because that can discourage competition, because obviously they're going to work to protect their economic interests. And I remember a conversation maybe 10 or 12 years ago I had with a person who might be qualified as an oligarch who said, I'd like to play by fair rules. I'd like to play by Europe's rules, but I can't do it in Ukraine unless everybody else is playing by the same rules. So how do you, and let me put this question to all 4 of you, what are the steps that you need to take to really put the oligarchs in the proper place? Sasha, go ahead.
Well, to put oligarchs in the proper place, we need the rule of law and the law enforcement to be working properly. Because if we have the rule of law in the country and we have the law enforcement that is judiciary functioning properly, independently, from any political parties, that means you can set up the rules that everybody's going to play in. And that's why we keep saying that the rule of law, the law enforcement is like the immune system of the state. So unless you don't fix this part, you cannot, it is very difficult to fix the others, because it ends up, as already Mustafa mentioned, that we have some problems in the courts, that any issue ends up, even appointment of a minister can end up in a court. So of course, the rule of law and the law enforcement is the key things, the judiciary, for the oligarchs to play fair inside the country.
I want to agree with my colleague, with Natalia, that Poroshenko did many things which should be respected. But one thing which didn't happen during those 5 years, and me as a member of his team previously, I'm very sorry that the first days when he became a president, and we asked him, I personally talked to him about that, and I can say it now, that the biggest threat from oligarchs is that if you are not playing the one rules for all of them, they will kill you. And that's what happened with him these 5 years. The biggest problem of his was that he didn't have equal approach to all of them. And I agree with Natalia that you said about Russian aggression and economy issues and etc. But unfortunately, the guy who sponsored Mr. Yanukovych and his party of region for 20 years became biggest friend of our president. And this guy was for pro-Russian parties. Here is representative of President Mr. Grassimov. He will sell it, maybe I saying something wrong, but this guy still is monopolist. This guy is running our anti-monopoly committee. This guy who actually built up on our economy big threat like Rotterdam plus its schema when they're importing coal from occupied territories and saying that he is buying somewhere in Rotterdam. That is the reality. And what I agree with Natalia also about new president, which has the same best friend, Mr. Kolomoisky. We should say it very vividly and obviously that this guy, Mr. Kolomoisky, is standing behind him. I know what will happen with my country in the next 5 years more from him than from my president, which is elected now. Mr. Kolomoisky now makes statements about what will be done, what should be done, and what shouldn't be done. And that is the biggest threat for next president. What should be done for these people? First of all, we should name the things how they are. We have oligarchs. The only difference between oligarchs and big business is that they're not influencing politics on a non-transparent way. If they want to finance politicians, it should be done transparent way. If they want to influence our parliament, it should be done by transparent way. And the many problems from these oligarchs is media. Now in Ukraine, even for young politicians who are sitting here to develop their own party, to run for parliament, it's impossible without dealing with these people. Because they have monopoly on TV, they have monopoly of delivering information to our audience. So without this transparent way of running media, influencing politics, and influencing president and government also, we will have the same problem next 5 years. It's unavoidable. These people want to earn money. They have this instinct and they will eat all presidents. Just believe me. It is a reality I see as a journalist. For 20 years in Ukraine, we have 5 people. And those 5 people are much more sustainable than all politicians, political parties, presidents, regimes. They're still survived. And the question of me is, who is running country? We or they? And we didn't have president who should say them, look, you are citizens of this country, but you are not Tsar of this country. You are not emperors, and we are not friends. We are just working in one country. I hope that next president, Mr. Zelensky, will be enough transparent and will have enough courage to say the same words to Akhmetov, Pinchuk, Firtash, and Kolomoisky. That would be real. And I asked him to make this blog. We are waiting for some video when Zelensky is sitting with these 5 oligarchs saying about equal rules. Believe me, that will be the other picture, now the page of our history. This guy is doing show. I'm waiting for this show. Show me oligarchs with the president who are dealing about rules. And then follow these rules. Thank you.
Again, go in terms of the economic growth, try to answer your question. I do believe that judicial reform and what is most important, reform of the work of Ukrainian Antitrust Authority, Anti-Monopoly Committee, would have a tremendous effect on the oligarchization of Ukraine. Antitrust authority should be regarded as a law enforcement authority. And it should, in Ukraine, it has enough power to influence the monopoly of the number of the oligarchs that we have. And I do believe that if Anti-Monopoly Committee would do its work properly and would follow the rules provided in Ukrainian legislation in terms of defining markets, watching out for potentially not new monopolies to be created, and actually dissolving the existing monopoly, it would have an effect on the oligarchization. The third very important issue, the more successful small and medium-sized businesses we have in the country, the less oligarchs we will have. Because these people, small and mid-sized business that have foreign investments or that are exporting abroad, would play by the international rules. They would bring the international mindset into the country, and they would change the mindset of Ukrainian young people that would like to play by the rule, to be led by example, and to be player not only on the local market, but to be a player on the global market.
If I may, I would like to say that probably I fully agree with previous speakers, but and of course equal rules and system of justice, effective, efficient monopoly policies were important. But I guess there is one more problem, the problem of our election system and also election culture. When I try to compare the Ukrainian system and for example, American system, in Ukraine, unfortunately, the people, they don't ready to invest in parties. And now it's a good chance, and it's also an opportunity for oligarchs to invest and to have a strong representative in the parliament. So the change the culture and change the process of the election to the parliament, when the small and medium businesses, when the people understand that it's much more effective to choose their own representative, to invest in this party, to develop the real parties in Ukraine, is very crucial for democracy. And once more, I guess it's also the problem of mass media, because if you're speaking about the Ukraine, the main mass media belongs to one of the oligarchs. So the free press and free civil society, social media, it's now very, very important on this transition period. So these two things, the free, strong media and civil society, together with changing the election culture and the election process in Ukraine, I guess could help. Thank you.
Okay, let me open up the floor to questions. Let me ask that you give a name, identification, and short question. And wait for the microphone, please.
Thank you. My name is Artur Gerasimov. I'm the head of the presidential Petro Poroshenko faction in the Ukrainian parliament. First of all, Mr. Fukuyama, organizer, thank you very much for inviting me to this event, because it's a very good thing to balance half empty, half full, glass of water. And first of all, what I want to say, I just listened that power in Ukraine did everything only exclusively because of the push from civil society. No, guys, we did together. And only because civil society and power in Ukraine were together as one team, we did that stuff on so high level. Just one example, very simple example, and many people can smile. But I think Sasha knows. Who was in the core, in the heart of the team who was organizing healthcare reform in Ukraine? Named Berezhenko, do you know? It's a truth. The Bloc Petro Poroshenko MPs, it's a true. Government, a lot of ministers from Petro Poroshenko bloc, it's a true. Because without this work together, health reform, believe me, didn't have any chance to happen in Ukraine, any. Because I wasn't also in the heart of these events. Second point, I listened to Mr. Mustafa carefully, And first of all, you told you are sure that Mr. Lutsenko, some international elections were approved by the president. I am sure from the heart of the system. It was not approved by the President Poroshenko, and Mr. Poroshenko immediately released full support to the ambassador of the United States. Just check the facts. And you told that prosecutor office about Yanukovych thinks it's only PR. Just one simple question. $1.5 billion returned money. I think in any country, any prosecutor will be proud of that stuff if it will be returned. And the last but not least, I totally supported anti-corruption infrastructure creation, totally supported, and you know, we did a job together again with civil society, with the huge meetings, with the huge clashing, by the way, because only during these clashes we were able to find the right solution. But now a small question to Mr. Mustafa Nayyem. According to the Ukrainian legislation, who is able and who is the only able now to investigate so-called A status state people corruptional issues? You understand, yeah, what I mean?
Yeah.
Because A status state people, it means ministers, MPs, etc. Because everybody is waiting big fish in the jail. But who is able and only able in Ukraine to investigate these big fish issues? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Acton, for your question. But I would start from very sad issues. When you are saying that we are together, did something with civil society, I would ask you, who was jailed from only one who killed our journalists, activists, attacked them? Who is the friend of Mr. Trukhanov who are now killing people in Odessa? It is Mr. Poroshenko. He never said something publicly that in Odessa we had crime regime which is supported by pro-Russian groups. And you know that, and I know that. The other guy, Mr. Kernes, in Kharkiv, who is the best friend of Mr. Kernes, who during Maidan supported Berkut against us, and against Poroshenko also. This is Mr. Poroshenko again. Do we have any kind of investigation that many people in Ukraine are under attack of local authorities, law enforcement agencies, just because they're protesting and fighting corruption? That's true. That's the reality we have. Who signed the law which forced activists to declare their incomes and assets? It looks like Mr. Poroshenko. I know Poroshenko many years. He's a very good guy. I understand that sometimes he was forced to do that. And that's why he lost this election. Because during 5 years, people who around him proposed him to, to attack activists, to force them declare their incomes, revenge, Mr. Pashinsky, Narodny Front, other people in our fraction, who asked Mr. Poroshenko, do something with these activists. And after that, Mr. Lutsenko told that the biggest enemy of our government and reform are journalists, media, and United States. That's the reality. And this is the same pattern we had during Yanukovych presidency. And answering your question, who is investigating these issues? It's done by Anti-Corruption Bureau. But is there some lawyers here that understand the investigation is done by supervision of prosecutors? And the prosecutor office is running by Mr. Lutsenko and Holodnitsky. And Holodnitsky, who is accused on selling cases, cooperating with corruptioners, is still there. I'm sure at least public corruption prosecutor. We didn't have it. And courts, you know that the only small shares of cases of Anti-Corruption Bureau are passed through courts. The courts who are controlled by Mr. Poroshenko in his office. We know that. So, of course, we can talk to each other saying who is guilty or who is not guilty. The achievement, and I agree with you, that many things was done. Many things were done together. But don't please undermine the role of civil society. And don't please attack them now, because I'm sure that for next presidency, for Mr. Zelensky, civil society and media would be the biggest problem. Believe me, I know these people. They will not go out from Ukraine. They will attack him also. They will investigate him. And this is what we achieved for the last 5 years, that we have on TV shows investigations of corruption. That the journalists in Ukraine, they could cover President, Minister of Interior, Prime Minister, everyone. 5 years ago, during Yanukovych's presidency, when I just named his building, Mezhigorye, his house, I was banned from all TV channels. Now it is open, and we can say that this is achievement of Ukrainian society for 5 years. Thank you.
Michael McFall, Stanford, thank you all for being here. First, I just want to say as a comment that we have 2 MPs having this exchange is a sign of the health of Ukrainian democracy, by the way. That doesn't happen in other parts of the country. So I want to get a question about how will we know if the reforms you all talked about, what would be the indicators that the President-elect Zelensky would be going on that path, okay? And let me elaborate on that. And then I want to ask what the West, and in particular what the Trump administration should do to help support that. But here's the paradox. You guys can argue all you want about whether Poroshenko did or did not do what he did, but because you live in a democracy, the Ukrainians voted, and guess what? He didn't win the last election. So whatever he did in those last 5 years was not convincing enough to the majority of Ukrainians that it was successful. And I want to know more about Mr. Zelensky. I don't know him. I know everybody else, but I don't know him. I would think that as coming in as president, the first thing he should be thinking about now is what will he do to succeed so that when he comes before the voters again, that he will not face Mr. Poroshenko's fate, right? So that would seem pretty logical that you don't want to just repeat what Mr. Poroshenko did. Nobody said anything here today, however, to convince me of that. What you said about the prosecutor general and his relationship, that makes me nervous. I haven't seen that video with him with the 5, you only mentioned 4 oligarchs, by the way, you left out 1. But I haven't seen that video today, so what would be the indicators, even concrete names of like, if he named this person to be prosecutor general, that would signal that he's doing the right thing. His relationship with Mr. Kolomoisky, what should he do to show that he is his own guy? And I want to remind you of a negative case. It's a very negative case, but there was this obscure Russian guy who out of the blue became president of Russia back in 2000. He was picked by Mr. Berezovsky. He was supported by Mr. Gusinsky and Mr. Khodorkovsky completely, and they controlled all the media. After he was elected, he had an electoral mandate, and suddenly the relationship changed rather radically. Now, I'm not advocating that for Ukraine, I want to be clear, but I don't understand after you won a massive electoral mandate, why some Mr. Kolomoisky should be controlling you for the next 5 years. Help me understand why that should be true in Ukraine today. I understand why it could be true before. I'm ignorant. I don't understand how an oligarch could have so much control over somebody with that kind of electoral mandate. The second thing, very concretely, what should the Trump administration do to support the kinds of reforms that you just talked about? We are an actor in this, presumably. And it could be symbolically. Mr. Pompeo should stop in Kiev on his way to Sochi, or it can be something much more concrete.
Okay. Very shortly about Trump, first of all. With respect to President of the United States, I can't say what he should do, but what I'm afraid of, I will tell that. Now we understand that Ukraine became a part of United States policy making. Unfortunately, we didn't want to do that. It was not our goal to interfere some election in Ukraine, in the United States. And what we see now is that something was done by previous ambassador and previous administration. And all initiatives which were supported by Maria Ivanovich was very transparent way. It was not only anti-corruption. It's just, it's a very ridiculous issue when we say that United States supports anti-corruption reforms. It's true, but it is also about national police, it's about National Guard, it's about economy and agencies, it's tax reform, etc. And what I'm afraid of, because of changing of the ambassador, they can change the focus, and we will have that everything which was done on before administration of previous ambassador will be undermined. What it means for us, it means that all these initiatives like Anti-Corruption Bureau, protecting journalists, protecting reforms, achievements of 5 years, they'll be attacked. And when my colleague Mr. Gerasimov says that Poroshenko didn't approve the initiative of Mr. Lutsenko to attack ambassador, it's very sad for president, which cannot stop his prosecutor general from interfering in international policy. And I know now what happened actually. Mr. Lutsenko came here, met the lawyer of Mr. Trump, and told him that, look, Ambassador of the United States in Ukraine somehow tried to influence an investigation against Trump. First of all, it's absurd. The second, even if that's true, how it should influence Ukrainian policymaking. It's my country. I want to make reform in our country, and we need support of Mr. Trump and administration. The second issue which we actually expecting from Mr. Trump, be very straightforward on sanctions against our common enemies and opponents. I hope that we will not have the same picture we have in Europe when there are discussions to lift sanctions or not to lift sanctions, to put sanctions on Nord Stream 2 or not to put the sanctions. We need very straightforward and clear message that with the changing of ambassador, with the changing of president, we will not change our strategy toward Russia and what they are doing in our territory. We need this message that be very clear for our European partners and international partners, and especially inside Ukraine, for those political parties who are now trying to shift our geopolicy with the new president. And about Zelensky, what should be done, and why I think that he can be influenced by Mr. Kolomoisky. Somehow, when someone became president, we think that he became some magic man, and he knows something we don't know, or he will do something that we cannot. But imagine that you, specifically you, will be president. Just imagine now that you have to appoint during 1 month more than 1,000 people on key points in our country, which is Secret Service, Prosecutor Office, governors, deputy governors, head of all agencies, all enforcement agencies on the local level, and prosecutor and Secret Service on the local level. It's more than 1,000 people. You never know, and you didn't have any kind of experience what is going on inside machine. You don't know these people, you don't know his names, you don't know their interests, you don't know even who's partner. But Ukrainian business and politics is very mixed, so vested interest is something very regular. And now you should appoint someone. For example, I don't know, governor of some oblast, or prosecutor general. You should find this guy, yes? What you can do, you ask those people who you know. He will not ask you or me. He will ask his friends, he will ask his circle, very close circle, and of course, there will be another way when someone will propose him. So now Mr. Zelensky coming to his table, his cabinet, and he will see these propositions from different people, and he will see, and he knows his own proposition. And then he's trying to discussion. And he would ask, do you know this guy? And I will say, yeah, he's a good guy. Appoint him. He's a very good guy. We know him. He will say, can I trust you? Yes, of course, you should do it. And he will appoint, for example, prosecutor general or some governor or head of Secret Service. In 1 month, journalist Natalia Sedletska will discover that he is crooked and corrupt. What should he do? Someone will come to him and say, look, this guy is corrupt. And he will say, what do you say? And he will find who advised him. and he will find those people who are around. What they will say him: don't trust. Journalists are lying. This guy is good. You should leave him. And that will be crucial and decisive moment for him. What should he do? Fire him or save him? If he will fire him, he will have direct conflict with those people. If he will save him, we will have the same rate which has Mr. Poroshenko in 5 years. Because it's the same pattern. And why I think that it could be Mr. Kolomoisky? Because the only one guy who is around him, who knows everything about country, he knows everything about system, about people, about economy, about law enforcement agencies, and he has his own interest, is Mr. Kolomoisky. I cannot say that it is something unavoidable or is that we definitely know. But the lawyer of Mr. Kolomoisky, Mr. Bogdan, respectful lawyer, but he works as a main advisor of Mr. Zelensky. Just imagine 5 years ago, 3 years ago, we made representation of private bank and we paid for that $5 billion. And Mr. Kolomoisky sued country. And his lawyer on this process is Mr. Bogdan. So this guy is protecting interests of Mr. Kolomoisky against country. At the same time, this guy coming to our head of parliament with the president-elect to discuss the data of inauguration. I think it's a little bit weird. We are scared about that. Again, I'm not saying that he's bad president. We don't know who is he. I'm not saying that he's crooked and corrupt. What we are saying that please name us. Your prosecutor general, head of secret service, governor, and chief of staff. That would be very bright sign that, of course, I had some business with Kolomoisky, but I would never agree to what he asked me.
Coming back to your question about the Trump administration, I would say continue financial and military support, but with conditionalities. We need conditionalities to help inside to push the reforms, but we do need the strong support, and this has to be clear for Ukraine right now, because we can see that the United States is the biggest supporter right now, and we can not stand it on our own. And the second thing is people. After Trump came to power, we did not have any strong appointments in the administration who would work directly with Ukraine. We used to have Nuland, we had Biden, so we had people who would look directly at Ukraine and would be our biggest supporters on the Hill. We don't have anybody now, and these people hadn't been there for a long time, unfortunately.
I would just add that.
Oh, he's for Donbass, it's different. I'm talking about the administrations.
If I may add up a few things related to economic growth. I believe that the best thing US could do for Ukraine now in terms of economic growth is open its market for us, which is probably, probability of that happening is like very low. Just to give you an example, Ukraine is now under the steel tariff sanctions, together with China, who is the biggest supplier, EU, your neighbors here in America. But for US, Ukrainian supplies are less than 3%. But for Ukraine, US is a major and traditionally big market. All the steel factories in Ukraine are situated in the east, very close to the war zone. The second issue, we have anti-dumping duties being enforced, actually supported both by Democratic and Republican administration for 25 years. Ukraine is market economy, and nobody has ever reconsidered actually application of this anti-dumping duties that hurts Ukrainian export. Very important issue is to provide mechanisms for supporting US investments into Ukraine. I believe that OPIC, the US corporation supporting foreign investment, should be more active in Ukraine and should work more with US investors that potentially looking into expanding to foreign markets. And the third very important issue for me is to increase support in terms of the technical assistance for developing of small and mid-sized business and technologies and innovation and opening new markets. On the geopolitical level, I believe that we need more sanctions against Russia and more stronger position on Nord Stream 2.
Actually, let me switch our moderator's role for just a second and talk about the Trump administration's approach. Two comments. First of all, the withdrawal of Ambassador Yovanovitch is wrong. It's a mistake, and potentially it's going to undercut the authority of American ambassadors around the world. But the second point, and this is, I think, for more for Ukrainians, is my expectation is that the next ambassador, whoever he or she may be, is going to continue to be an advocate for reform and anti-corruption steps. Because that's really solidified within the U.S. bureaucracy as it looks at Ukraine. I mean, the U.S. vision for Ukraine can't succeed unless you have somebody coming in and taking the same line that Ambassador Yovanovitch has taken. And the last point I would make is that if you have an ambassador come in who does not carry out that line, there are a number of people, including a number of Americans in this room, who are going to be speaking out very loudly about it. So that's all I have to say. I'll now sit back to the moderator and recognize the next question. Right in the center, please.
Thank you so much. My name is Victor Dohan. I am Deputy Minister of Infrastructure of Ukraine. Short question, 4 answers. Imagine you are in the top 5 list of the new party for the October elections. Who would you name as the leader, as the number 1 of your party? Thank you. Four names for 4 questions.
Who wants to start with that?
Number 1 in my party? Yeah, of course. It's too difficult to answer because I'm a current member of the government, so...
We won't tell anyone.
Yes. No, I am personally, it's not a secret that I am a member of the Prime Minister's team, so probably as a Prime Minister I believe in him in this situation, and I guess he will be able, yes, to put the reforms forward. So my name is the current Prime Minister Grozny.
What I've learned at Stanford is that political parties are not always about names. And I truly believe that, Ukrainians are so good in terms of uniting against something. We united against Yanukovych regime. We unite about, against a threat from Russia. But we are not so good, or we're still learning. I'm very positive about that. In terms of uniting for something, for me, the name is not of the biggest importance. For me, it's important that this political party has in top 10 issues on its agenda economic growth.
Sure. Again, I cannot name you the person who would be leading it, but for me it's more important who would be in the 20s and in the 10s who are going to pass, because sometimes you have a leader, and Ukraine is always about these leader parties, and you see people jumping from one party to another. So it's not about the leader, it's about the core team who is going to be running. So for me, that's going to be the most important.
I would say, and sort of very clear, I think that the name of leader of my party will be we. I mean, those people who are here sitting, especially in this panel also, because last 5 years what happened, when we entered parliament, we didn't have any kind of experience to building up teams. And always people asked us, are you going with, and then several names? Or who is your leader, and then several names. I want to see the party in which will be names of those people who I was fighting last 12 years as a journalist, activist, and politician. It's young politicians in parliament, outside parliament. It's Люди Важливі, it's Однодумці, it's Сили Людей, it's our Дізнамі, it's other many young people around the country who doesn't have enough resources, and unfortunately sometimes doesn't have enough courage to say that we are those people and we are those party which can run country. And I really deeply believe that this parliament election would change it. Because definitely we understand that the names we are saying before, they betrayed us. Some of them are not so courage, some of them are not so clear. So I hope that we will be the party which will fight for the next parliament also. And the special name, I would not say that we have many of them. There are very little small amount of people who are exposed. So the one who will say that I am the man who can run party, I will be with him.
I'm the woman.
That's also okay. Unfortunately, we had only one, leader party in Ukraine who is woman, and I'm not with her.
Never
But
too late.
We have time for one more last question. Right here in the center.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Naz. I'm an undergraduate here. So I have a question actually related to the topic of teams. What is your interpretation of Zelensky, including former ministers who've contributed to positive changes under the previous regime on his team? Do you think that's kind of a counter signal to potential oligarch influences, or do you think it's merely just symbolic? Thank you.
I think that I would be the first one to comment because I worked with both Aivaras Abramovičius and Alexander Daniluk. Aivaras was the one that brought me into the government. I do believe that both Alexander Daniluk and Aivaras Abramovičius, they have liberal values. They would support economic growth. The biggest question I have, and actually we invited them here, unfortunately they were not able to come. The biggest question that I have is how influential they are within Mr. Zelensky team. And I would also again, support Mustafa on that the first appointments that we would see would show us who are the people that are influencing policies at Mr. Zelensky. Because what we see now, we follow him a lot on all of us on Twitter, Facebook. That's the way how he communicates, which I'm, fine with, at least for now. But on some issues, he is very decisive. For example, Russian aggression. On some issues, we only hear his advisors talking, or the people that claim to be members of his team talking, but we've never heard him talking. And we still do not understand the hierarchy in the team and the lead people for major issues.
I think it's very clear. We don't know what is that. It's like in movie, sometimes we see that above the city you see some UFO. It's very beautiful, it's very bright, and it's big, because 73% is big. But you don't know where is the entrance, what is going on inside, and sometimes someone from inside says something, which is very beautiful, because I like his statement against Russia, I like his statements against corruptioners, and even against prosecutor general, but we don't know what is inside. So it looks like, and the problem is that now everyone gets used, that he's keeping silence, he's hanging, but it will definitely finish after inauguration. We are waiting, really waiting. Many people want to work with him. We don't know to whom to talk even. That's the problem.
I just have time for one last question. Up in the front. Oh, right, okay.
Hello, Katya Smagli, the McCain Institute Next Generation Leaders Program. I have a question to Mustafa, a former employee of the US Embassy in Ukraine. You just mentioned that we don't know what is on the inside, but your best friend, Sergei Lechenko, seemed to be on the inside. Did he share any inside information with you?
Sergei really is my friend. That's true. I passed with him many years of being a journalist, and I'm proud that he's my friend. But unfortunately, we have different point of view on what's going on in Ukraine now. And we are different approach to President-elect. What I hope that the people like Sergei, like Daniluk, like Aivaras, really will influence next president. Because I know that these people have values, and they are able to do that. But my experience showed that sometimes bright people are used by many politicians to make their brutal issues. I hope that we have different situation. It will be obvious in some days, I think. And regarding deepness of information about Mr. Zelensky. Imagine this guy was running for president 5 months ago. We are sitting in Stanford. Here, politicians, diplomats, journalists, members of parliament, and all of us don't know nothing. So it is scary a little bit, yes? But this is something that showed us that maybe there is nothing. Maybe there is no strategies, no plans, no team, and it's even more scary. So I hope that now it is maybe a very secret room in which, developed everything, all strategies, who should be appointed, our future and plan. And immediately after inauguration, we'll have this gift to our nation. But for this moment, unfortunately, this is, we are just waiting. That's it.
Okay, let me pose one last question keying off that, because I think 3 of you have now said that a key indicator of where President Zelensky is going to go will be his first appointments. Would I be correct in assuming then, say within like 2 to 3 weeks after he's inaugurated, we're going to have the answer? Yes or no?
To you,
Yes.
Mustafa.
Well, we'll start with Mustafa.
So the first thing is who's going to be appointed. The second thing is what Mustafa was talking about previously. Even if we see that person who's being appointed is honored, trustable, but he ends up in a month or 2 in a scandal, whether these people are going to be fired. So this is the critical thing. But I would say that having nothing there might be a good sign too, because it would be more scary if he came out the first day and said, I'm going to keep Lutsenko, this is my new general prosecutor. So I would say we need to wait. We have to see, and yes, the appointment and the first anti-corruption scandals would be the key for us.
I guess it's no decision, it's also the decision, because after the inauguration process we will see the first step of the new elected president, and after that we can make some conclusions concerning his first step. So we'll see. So I guess we should wait till the end of this month.
I think that first appointments are important, but they are not decisive in terms of my attitude towards President-elect Zelensky. But I cannot agree that we should wait. We cannot wait. Russia is standing very close to Ukraine. No, I'm saying that all of us should try to influence the forming of the strategy document in one or the other way, using our network of contacts, using our outreach to them. And the most important, West should not wait. US shouldn't wait. EU shouldn't wait. And the more high-level visits and talk with President-elect Zelensky we have, and I believe it's not about Secretary Pompeo going to Ukraine, potentially Vice President Pence. I don't know how feasible it is, but we need to have a high-level representation coming to Ukraine and talking to Zelensky as much as possible in order to influence the strategies that he's working on, or his team is working on. Because he's a very ambitious guy, and he's young and ambitious.
Last word.
First of all, of course we had different point of view on Zelensky and different political agenda during election. Now election finished, and we have President of Ukraine, and it's Mr. Zelensky. With respect to him and my country, and my previous president, Mr. Poroshenko, who actually peacefully transmitted power, and it is our achievement also. I would say that many people of Ukraine are ready to work with new president and his administration. Because it's not about him, it's not about name, it's not about Kolomoisky, it's about our country, and it's about our future. At least many of us who are sitting here, we spent 5 years after Maidan. We never believed that somehow will be involved in processes inside system before Maidan, but we did it. And I don't want to lose these 5 years, so we should proceed this agenda. And I do my best to help, to encourage, and maybe to force new administration to do this agenda and to fulfill it. So I would ask him, first of all, about Prosecutor General. That is crucial point for everything, for economy, for army, for procurements, for police, for NABU, for everyone. Prosecutor General is crucial point, and I'm waiting for him. And this guy should be appointed for 6 years. The second is Secret Service, which is about frontline and is his responsibility. And we are waiting that all these agencies will not interfere business anymore. We will not have economic departments in police, in prosecutor office, and in SBU. These two issues are very important. If he would do this proper way, what I mean proper, it's not my friend should be appointed there, but we should understand who is that guy, what is his values, and what his background. If it would be done, me personally, I'm agree to work with his administration to help. I'm not ready to take responsibility on what is going on inside his team, but I'm ready to take responsibility for my work, for my job in parliament, occupied territories, law enforcement agencies, or something else. And I think all of us here, sitting here, we are all about that. We are not fighting with the president. We are fighting for the future of our country, and unfortunately now we have fight with Russia. This is our framework and red lines.
Well, please join me in thanking the panel. It's a great start.